morning, everyone. Today, we will be talking about proving triangle congruence. Now, for the prerequisite of this topic, you should know how to identify triangle congruence by SSS, SES, ASA, or AAS postulates. Now, let's go to the next slide. Again, for us to prove that two people are identical twins, we don't need to show that all 2,000 body parts are equal. We can take a shortcut and show 3 or 4 things are equal, such as their face, age, and height. If these are the same, I think we can agree that they are twins. The same is true for triangles. We don't need to prove all 6 corresponding parts are congruent. We have shortcuts or methods. Now, let's just have a quick review of the 4 postulates. Okay, now we will know that the triangle congruence is by SSS if you can see all the 3 sides of a certain triangle congruent to the corresponding sides also of the other triangle. So that the 2 triangles are congruent by SSS. Clear? Okay, let's move on to the next part. Now, on the other hand, if it's an SAS congruence, now you just basically, let me use a pointer, laser point. Okay, now you just have to look into the included angle. Okay, now look at this part. This is the included angle, and this one also. You have to make sure that the two triangles are identical. If not, then they are not congruent. Okay? So, this is read as SAS. The angle must be between the two sides. Okay. Now, let's move on to the other postulate. Okay. Included angle, yung nasa labas, dalawa dito. Non-included angles. Okay, let's move on. Now, on the other hand, we have this ASA. Now, in SAS, the angle must be included. Here, the side must be included. Okay? Two angles must share common side, just like this one. Okay? Side AB is a common side of angle A and angle B. Okay? So, if that would be the case, the two triangles are congruent by ASA. And finally, for our last part, we have AAS. So, how will you know that the triangle congruence is by AAS? So, let's have a quick comparison. In ASA, the side is included, meaning the side is being shared by the two angles. Here in AAS, there are two given angles. It's just that the side is a non-included side. Okay? Two angles that are not sharing the same side. So that is AAS. Okay? So this time, let's know more about basic geometric properties which we need in proving triangle congruence, because later on we will have a 2-column proof. Okay? Now this time, okay, it's a practice exercise, and just let's just run over this one since we're done discussing this part before, and try your best to see the congruence. It's just a comparison, so always remember there's no SSA, so if that would be the case, just write not congruent, okay, instead of not enough information. So for this part, they are congruent by AAS. Okay? Sige. Now, let's try to learn about vertical angles. You know that one already. Vertical angles are said to be congruent. Okay, how do you know that they are vertical angles? Okay, there is this form. Actually, there are two pairs. It's just that we just need the inner. Okay, the interior vertical angles. Okay? Sige. reflexive side sharing the same side. And it's also part of the properties. Okay? Sige, let me skip this part. Okay, just try to see that on your own. Assuming that you know this already, because it was discussed before. Okay. Now, okay, let's go directly in writing a proof. Okay. A proof is a logical argument in which each statement you can make is backed up by a statement that is accepted as true. One type of proof is called a paragraph or informal proof. Okay? Now, a more formal with statements and reason is called two-column proof, or sometimes called a formal proof. Okay? Now, this kind of proof, two-column proof, will be used in this discussion. Okay. Now, let's have the next slide. Okay. When starting a proof, make the marks on the diagram indicating the congruent parts. So we will mark our given diagram later on. We can actually use the given information, the basic geometric properties, definitions, etc. And we are going to call any given information that does not specifically state congruency or equality a prerequisite. Okay? Say for example, this is your given AB, side AB is congruent to side CD. So this one is already stating a congruency. Okay, no need to find the congruent part because it's already stated. Now what if it's like this? B is the midpoint of, say for example, AC, side AC. So there's no congruency yet, but you can find the congruency out from this statement. So in that case, we will call this statement as prerequisite statement. Okay? Okay. Now, let's dig deeper in this sense. Okay, some reasons we will be using are the definition of midpoint, definition of a bisector, vertical angles are congruent, definition of... Okay, anyway, I will not go here in this part. Focus lang tayo dito sa... okay, hindi natin gagamitin ito. Okay, reflexive property will still be used. Okay, hindi na lang siguro tayo aabot dito sa mga activities para hindi masyado marami. Okay, now here, let's try to discuss the useful geometric properties. And before, na-discuss ko naman to before sa online session natin, i-focus ko na lang kayo dito sa mas mahahalagang gagamitin natin in our proving triangle congruence. Okay, hindi naman lingid sa kaalaman natin that the sum inside the triangle is always 180 degrees. Remember this one. Okay? Be it isosceles, equilateral, scalene, the sum of the angles inside the triangle is always 180 degrees. Okay? Okay. Sige. Vertical angles theorem are said to be congruent. Okay? We can use the abbreviation VAT. Okay? Or VAT. Meaning, vertical angles are congruent. You can spell out the theorem or you can just write vertical angles are congruent. The meaning. Okay? Reflexive property, of course, you know this one already. Itong gagamitin natin, may given triangle, and then ito AB, and CD. Okay, sasabihin mong side AB is congruent to side AB. Okay, by what? Reflexive property. Okay? Now, I'm sorry, we will have to skip the following properties, yung iba, kasi na-discuss na natin before. Okay? I-focus ko lang kayo dito. Now, focus tayo dito sa definition of segment by sector. So, what does it mean to have definition of segment by sector? Okay, look at the illustration here. Now, if for example, okay, let me write the statement of this one. Side AB bisect. Okay, side PQ at point F. Okay, point F. So here, side AB is our bisector. So what does it mean to have a bisector? Meaning to say, it will divide the segment PQ into two equal parts. So it will state congruency. Now, if you happen to see this statement, side AB bisect, side PQ at point F, it's considered as a prerequisite statement. Okay, prerequisite statement. There's no congruency statement yet. But you can find out in this statement, once you're done illustrating also, that the two segments are congruent by definition of segment by sector. Okay? Side PF, okay, is congruent to side QF. Pwedeng magkabaliktad ha. Okay? And this is now your congruency statement. Okay? Congruency statement. Let me write. Okay, are we clear with that? Sige. Now, this is still the definition of the segment by sector. Now, let's go directly to the definition of midpoint. Okay, let me just write the statement you can see improving. Say, for example, you have a B is the midpoint of side AC. Okay? Now, still, this is a prerequisite statement. Okay? Sulat ko na lang dito. So, if it's a prerequisite statement, you have to find out the congruency. Okay? Now, look at this one. Let me use a highlighter. Okay. Color green. Now, if there's a midpoint, same with bisector, it means that it is dividing the given figure into two parts. The given side or segment into two equal parts. Okay? So, this time, if there's a midpoint, we can say that side AB is congruent to side CB. So, what is your reason? Are you just assuming? No. There's this property called definition of midpoint. Okay? Sige. Now, this time, we have the definition of angle bisector. Though, ito yung madalas ginagamit, definition of segment bisector and definition of midpoint. We also have to know this definition of bisector. Now, angle bisector rather. Now, we have to remember that a bisector could be a line, it could be a segment, it could be a ray. So, talking about ray, there's an end point on the other side, and the other side is infinite. Okay? That's like that. So, that's a ray. Okay? Now, here, we can say that ray AD, say for example, in that particular example, ray AD bisect angle BAC. Okay, that's it. Ray AD bisects angle BAC. Again, what does it mean to have a bisector? There are two congruent parts. And this time, it's a definition of angle bisector. Because the thing that we are bisecting is an angle and not a segment. Okay? It could only be a definition of segment bisector if the thing that we are dividing is a segment and not an angle. Clear? Sige. So, we will just divide the given angle into two congruent parts. Okay? Sige. Look at this one. I'm highlighting this one. So we can say that angle BAD, okay, BAD, let me use a highlighter, a laser point. Angle BAD is congruent to angle CAD. You basically divide angle BAC into two congruent parts, okay? And they are congruent by definition of angle bisector. And this time, this is still considered as a prerequisite statement. You have to find out the congruency. Clear? Sige, let's move on. Okay, alternate interior angles theorem. The two interior angles are said to be congruent. If there's a transversal, and the transversal is cutting the two parallel lines. The parallel lines, rather. Okay, hindi na siguro tayo aabot dito as much as I want to. Focus tayo dun sa definition of bisector, vertical angles theorem, and so on. Now, proof writing tips. Okay, one of the best ways of figuring out how to write a proof is to work backwards from the conclusion. Okay, upon seeing the figure and the given, you should know the answer. So, for example, SSS ba to? SAS. And then, you just have to write your reason. Okay, ganito kasi yan, in every congruency statement that we will make, or the prerequisite statement, we will back up the following with reasons. Okay, we cannot just say they are congruent without proving at all. Okay, so what are you trying to prove? Congruent triangles, congruent segments, congruent angles. Okay, what is the relationship? Okay, what are the possible methods of proving that? Ito yung sinasabi ko, SSS ba, SAS, ASA, AAS. So, congruent segment, CP, Though hindi na tayo aabot dyan, focus na tayo dun sa forementioned postulate. Okay, now let's move on to the next slide and let's try to read the tips muna. Do I have enough information to prove that the two triangles are congruent? Okay, label the figure with known information, given as well as inferred. Do the triangles shared a side or angle so that it is congruent in both triangles? Okay? Does every step serve a purpose and a valid reason? Do you have steps that don't lead anywhere? Do all of your steps follow a logical order? Okay, these are the steps you should follow in proofs. Okay, using the given information, label your picture. Okay, you have to mark your picture. Next, the first statement in your proof should be the first given, and the reason should be given. Okay, we will demonstrate the following steps later on. Deduce all possible information from that given until a congruency is reached. Continue with next given and repeat step 3. And then, if you use up all your givens and you do not have 3 congruencies, look for a reflexive side, a reflexive angle, or a pair of vertical angles to get a congruency. Okay, you can go back to the steps, okay, if you are confused in our examples later on. Once you have 3 congruencies, determine if the triangles are congruent by SSS, SAS, ASA, or AAS. But prior to this one, in the very first part of proving, you should know the answer already given the information. Okay? Parang backward yung process natin. Now, the last statement should be the proof statement, and the reason should be a triangle congruence theorem. Sige, let's demonstrate the following steps given the example. Okay, now look at this example. We are going to complete the proof of the following. Now, look at the diagram. Okay, this is our diagram. And as you can see, the two triangles share a common side. Okay, so we will have to use a reflexive side, okay, upon looking into it. Now, in this case, I want you to use all your given. Now, let's check our given first. Now, class, take a look in the first given. It is stating congruency, okay? It's not a prerequisite statement, same with the second one. So, that's a good thing. This proving is quite easy. So, the first thing you need to do is to write your first given in the statement. Okay, we should observe order here. Okay, side US is congruent to side UG. What is your reason? Since it's a given, you just have to write the word given. Okay, later on. But before that, I forgot, we have to mark our diagram given the information here using the given information. Side US is congruent to side UG. Okay? After done marking, pwedeng isulat nyo muna yung reason before kayo mag-mark or vice versa. Pwede. So, the reason is given. Now, look into the given. We are done using up our first. Okay? We're done using up our first given. We will have to make use of our second given. Okay? I want you now to write your second given in the statement column. So, after you're done writing side ST is congruent to side GT, go back to the diagram and let's mark the following parts. Side ST, okay, is congruent to side GT, and you have to write your given here. Okay, the reason is still given. Lahat na makikita dito, prerequisite statement or congruency statement na siya, given yung magiging reason. Now, since we're done already stating the two congruency here, I want you now to analyze your diagram. Is this diagram saying that we have to use reflexive property or vertical angles theorem? Make use of VAT, vertical angle theorem, or reflexive property. So, upon checking, the two triangles are sharing the same side. So, we can say that the two sides are congruent. You have to name that side. Side UT is congruent by side UT. Pwedeng magkabaliktad. Okay? And what is your reason? It could be VAT or reflexive property. So, in this case, you can mark that one. The two sides are congruent by reflexive property. And try to check our illustration. Is. It's basically a side problem. Okay? Now, the thing you will do is to write the proof statement. This is the last step. That's the proof statement. And then, write either SSS, SAS, yung ano ba. Okay, here the proof statement suggests SSS. Okay, simple as that. And this is the easiest example. Okay, now let's move on to the next part. Okay, complete the following proof. Okay, let's analyze our given first. Okay, upon analyzing our given, the first given states congruency. Okay, there's a congruent already. Congruent parts. Congruency. Meron. Congruent siya. May congruency. Now, here, this is a prerequisite statement. What if teacher, prerequisite lahat? So, kailangan mo pa talaga siyang i-deduce para makita yung congruent statement natin. Okay? So, let's start first in this part. Okay? Now, we will state that side TV is congruent to side EV. Write it in the first part. In proving, we have to observe order. Bawal magkabaliktad. Now, in this case, we are following this time. Itong isulat muna ang first given. Kung congruent agad, dire-diretso lang. Pero pag may prerequisite, unahin muna natin hanapin yung prerequisite before we move to the second given, and so on. Now here, since the first given states congruency, mark the following. Automatically, side TV is congruent to side EV. Okay? So, in that case, our reason is given. Automatic point na yun. So, hindi tayo masi-zero dito. Now, let's move on to the second. Okay, given. Input the second given in our statement column. U is the midpoint of side TE. Okay? So, what does it mean again to have U as the midpoint of side TE? Before that, sulat mo muna given. Okay. So, we have to find out the congruency. Now, look into our diagram here and find the midpoint U. And it's the midpoint of side TE. It means that the two sides are congruent. Okay? Side TU and side EU. So, if we will go back to the basic geometric properties, they are congruent by the definition of midpoint. Okay, try to analyze our figure. Now, once you're done finding the two congruency or the two congruent parts, you have to look into the third part. Okay, kailangan na kasi natin ng tatlo. Pwede angle, pwedeng side. Kapag angle, most likely vertical angles. Theorem. If they are sharing common side, reflexive property. And upon checking the diagram, they are still sharing common side. And you just have to identify that those sides. Side VU is congruent by itself. Of course, side VU by reflexive property. Simple as that. And still, we have S. So, gamit na gamit masyado ang pagmaster ng triangle congruency na topic. Okay? Before going to the proving. Kasi kasunod lang sila eh. Okay? This is still easy. And the only difference is that, sa second statement natin, prerequisite. So, humaba, no? Naging 5 na kanina, 4 statements lang because of the prerequisite statement. Okay? So, kung ano naman, kung congruent naman kaagad yung given natin, 4 lang yung numbering natin. Hindi na tayo aabot sa 5. Okay? Always write the proof statement in the last part. Now, let's move on. And I think this video is quite long, given the nature of the topic. Okay. Now, complete the proof of the following. Okay. JW bisect IX at K. Side IX bisect side JW at K, and JI is congruent to side WX. Now, look into this particular given. We have 3 given. The 2 are prerequisites. Okay, let me just write. Okay, prerequisite statement. So, you have to expect mako-consume nito yung first 2. Okay, sa prerequisite. Okay, para sa prerequisite. Then, after sa second, para sa prerequisite ulit. And finally, dito mo isusulat si third statement. Okay? Ganun talaga kapag may prerequisite statement, mako-consume niya yung dalawang part. Okay, sa statement column. Okay, unahin muna natin yung first statement. Okay, write the first statement here. But you have to find out the congruency. You have to look into the diagram. Take note that side JW is the bisector here, and we are bisecting side IX at K. We will not divide JW into 2 parts, side JW, but we will divide side IX. Kasi nga, si JW is the bisector. So, look into the given problem here. Where is side IX? Okay, let me highlight. Take note, side JW here is the bisector. And you are dividing IX into 2 equal parts. Okay? So, let me highlight the given. Given na yan siya automatically. So, here we can say, okay, nauna na siya. Sige lang. Okay, we can say that side IK is congruent by side xk. Let me go back here. By the definition of segment by sector. Yung kanina nga properties. Okay, may congruency na. Okay, saan galing yung side ik is congruent to side xk? From the prerequisite statement. Ito na yung congruence statement natin. Okay, so since we're done using the first given, nakita na natin yung congruent statement. Let's go to the second given. Okay, sige, let's mark the second given para ma-follow natin. Okay, and then let's occupy the fourth column, the third column rather, kasi nauna na kanina. Okay, side ix bisect side jw at k. Okay, what's your reason? Given. Now, what's the congruent statement? Let's find out. Let's look into the diagram. Let me use another color. This time, side ix is bisecting jw at k. Now, this time, we will divide jw into two congruent parts. Okay? So, here, if you look closer, we can say that side jk is congruent to side wk by still definition of segment by sector. If nalilito, balikan yung previous part ng video. Okay, nandun na state yung ano natin. Definition of segment by sector. Okay, now here, okay, let's use up the third given this time. Write the third given, and because this is already a congruent statement, so may tatlong parts na tayo, given pa rin yung reason, identify natin. Okay, mark natin yung part na to, ji is congruent to side wx, so still s. Diba? Maganda yung mga given natin. Halos s lahat. Okay? Sige daw. What if iba na naman, teacher, yung i-discuss natin? Other than s. Possible ba? Yes. Pero s kasi yung pinakamadali sa lahat. Sige, let's move on to the second part. Now, let's complete the given proof. Okay, check natin. Bakit 4 lang? Kasi congruent statement na to. Okay, let's write side AB, it's congruent to side BD, given yung reason. Don't forget to mark your diagram. And then, let's use up the second statement. And write it in the statement column. Mark your diagram. And then, the reason must be given. Now, if we will try to analyze our figure, it does not suggest reflexive property, but we can see vertical angles. So, in this case, I want you to identify the vertical angles. Okay. And we can say that the two angles are congruent because of this one. Vertical angles are congruent. Or pwede mong isulat yung vertical angle theorem or yung abbreviation na lang, VAT. Understandable na yun. If you want to lessen your writing. Okay? Just write VAT. Now, again, i-repeat ko, kapag may dalawang given na congruent parts, be it an angle or a side, you have, and then kung wala ka ng given, na use up mo na lahat ng given, look into a reflexive side or a vertical angle. Vertical angles. To complete your proof. And since meron na tayong dito, this is suggesting SAS. Okay? Okay. Sige. So, write the proof statement, and then finally, we can say that the two triangles are congruent by SAS. So, para talagang nag-proving ka lang dati, ng identify lang kaagad. Kaya lang, kailangan natin i-back up yung mga properties. Okay? Sige, let's move on to the next part. Okay. Sige, how about this time? Magagamit na natin yung isang property dito. Sige, yung first statement natin, by the way, it's a prerequisite statement. Yung second is a congruent statement. Okay? That is why 5 yung ano natin. Numbering natin dito. Okay. Now, let's use the first given. Excuse me. Let's write the first given here in our statement column. And then, let's find out the congruency. If, say for example, side YZ bisect angle XYJ. Divide angle XYJ into two equal parts. Okay? In that case, okay, let's mark the following. Let me use a pen. Okay, this is our angle XYJ. Divide the angle into two equal parts. And you can say, now that angle XYZ is congruent to angle JYZ by definition of angle bisector. Okay? Sige. After using the first given, let's make use of the second given. Write it here. And then your reason must be given, of course. And don't forget to mark. Okay? So, since the two parts are already given and the two parts are actually angles, so we have to look into the third part and identify if we will be using a reflexive property or simple as VAT, vertical angles theorem. So, by inspection, we have common side. You just have to name that common side. Side YZ is congruent to side YZ by reflexive property. So, if we will look into our given figure, it is suggesting write the proof statement first and the reason must be ASA or ASA. Okay? Sige. Now, do we still have another example? Let's see. Okay, we use up our example, so that ends our presentation. Don't forget to study the steps. Thank you.